The lights of Nexus Station blazed through the darkness of space like a small sun. Ships of every size and shape moved around it like insects around a flame. Some were sleek and silver. Others looked like floating rocks with engines strapped to them. The station was huge, bigger than most cities back on Earth. It spun slowly, creating gravity for the millions of beings who lived and worked inside. Cale Morrison guided his cargo ship toward the docking bay. His ship was old and beaten up, with scratches and dents covering its hull. It was not pretty, but it worked. That was what mattered when you made your living hauling cargo from one star system to another. He had been flying the same route for 3 years now, carrying supplies to the outer colonies and bringing rare metals back to the core worlds. The docking computer spoke to him in a flat electronic voice. "Cargo vessel Aurora, you are cleared for Bay 17. Welcome to Nexus Station." Cale pressed a button on his control panel. "Thanks, Control. Coming in now." The bay doors opened like a massive mouth swallowing his small ship. Magnetic clamps grabbed the Aurora and pulled it to a stop. Steam hissed as the atmospheric seals locked into place. Cale stretched in his pilot's chair and yawned. He had been flying for 16 hours straight. His back ached and his eyes burned from staring at the navigation screens. After shutting down the ship's systems, Cale walked through the cargo hold. Crates filled with rare earth metals were stacked floor to ceiling, all properly secured for the long journey. Tomorrow he would oversee their unloading and pick up his next cargo. But tonight he just wanted a drink and maybe some real food instead of the processed meals he ate on his ship. The station corridor buzzed with activity. Beings from dozens of different worlds walked, crawled, and floated past him. A group of tall, blue-skinned Altarians moved by, their movements graceful and flowing like dancers. 3 short, stocky dwarven miners pushed a cart full of tools, arguing loudly in their rough language. A methane breather in an environmental suit glided past on its gas jets, leaving a faint chemical smell in the air. Cale had gotten used to the alien zoo that was galactic civilization. When humanity first made contact with other species 5 years ago, everything had seemed impossible and wonderful. Now it was just normal. He nodded to the beings he recognized and ignored the ones who stared at him. Humans were still new to the galaxy, and some aliens had never seen one before. The cantina was exactly what Kyle expected from a space station bar. It was dark and smoky, filled with the sounds of a dozen different languages and the clink of glasses. The air recyclers worked overtime to filter out the various atmospheric requirements of the different species, but they could not eliminate all the smells. It was not pleasant, but it was familiar. Cale found an empty table near the back and sat down. A server droid rolled over on its wheeled base. Its voice was pleasant but mechanical. "Welcome to Stellar Rest Cantina. What can I serve you tonight?" "Terran whiskey if you have it," Kyle said. "And whatever food you have that won't kill a human." "One moment, please." The droid's optical sensors flickered. "We have synthetic whiskey flavored for human taste buds, and today's special is grilled protein from the Tau Ceti system, prepared for mammalian consumption." "Sounds good. Bring it over." The droid rolled away and Cale leaned back in his chair. The cantina was busy tonight. Traders, spacers, and travelers from across the galaxy filled the tables. Most ignored each other, focused on their own drinks and conversations. But one table near the center of the room was different. The beings sitting there were loud and their voices carried across the room. They were Vextai, and Cale recognized the species immediately. They were tall and reptilian, with green-scaled skin and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. Their movements were quick and sharp like lizards. The Vextai were known throughout the galaxy as warriors and raiders. They claimed to follow some ancient code of honor, but most beings knew they were just pirates with fancy uniforms. The leader of the group was bigger than the others, with darker scales and more elaborate armor. His voice was the loudest, and he gestured with his clawed hands as he spoke. Cale could not understand the Vextai language, but he could tell the reptilian was telling some kind of story. The others listened and hissed with what sounded like laughter. Other beings at nearby tables had turned to listen as well. A group of insect-like klaxon traders clicked their mandibles in amusement. Some crystalline zephyrites chimed in musical tones that indicated they found something funny. Even a table of normally serious Centaurian merchants seemed interested in whatever the Vextai was saying. The server droid returned with Cale's order. The whiskey tasted wrong, too sweet and with a chemical aftertaste, but it was better than nothing. The protein was actually quite good, tender and seasoned with something that reminded him of garlic. He ate slowly, listening to the background noise of the cantina and trying to relax after his long flight. But the Vextai were getting louder, and now Kale could make out some words. They were speaking in Galactic Standard, the common language used for trade and diplomacy. The big one was definitely telling a story, and from what Kale could hear, it was not a pleasant one. And then the soft mammals began to weep, the Vextai leader said, his voice carrying clearly across the room. Tears streaming down their faces like rain. Please, they said, please don't hurt us. Ha! Such weakness from a species that claims to be civilized. The other Vextai hissed with laughter. One of them spoke up. Tell them about the female Sithran. Tell them how she begged. Sithran, apparently the leader's name, stood up from his chair. He was even bigger than Kale had thought, nearly 7 feet tall with muscles that rippled under his scales. His armor was decorated with trophies from various species, including what looked like human insignia. Ah, yes, the female. Sithran's voice was full of cruel amusement. She threw herself at my feet, clutching at my boots with her weak little hands. Take me, she said, but spare the younglings. As if I cared about her pitiful sacrifice. More laughter erupted from the Vextai table and spread to other nearby tables. Kale felt his jaw tighten, but he kept eating. This was nothing new. Ever since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, there had been species who saw them as weak. Humans were mammals, warm-blooded and emotional. Many reptilian and insectoid species viewed this as a sign of inferiority. But the best part, Sithran continued, was how they all surrendered without a fight. Not one of them even tried to resist. They just stood there and let us take them. Such a pathetic species. I wonder how they ever achieved spaceflight. A Klaxon trader clicked his mandibles in agreement. Perhaps they stole the technology, or maybe another species felt sorry for them. This drew more laughter from around the room. Kale's hand tightened around his glass, but he did not move from his table. He had heard worse things about humans before. Most alien species saw them as the galaxy's newest comedy act, a species that had somehow stumbled into interstellar civilization despite being weak and emotional. The problem was, they were not entirely wrong. Humans were physically weaker than most galactic species. They were slower than the Vextai, smaller than the Altarians, and had none of the natural weapons that many species possessed. In a galaxy where strength often meant survival, humanity looked like an easy target. But as Kale sat in the dark cantina, listening to the cruel laughter and mocking voices, he could not shake the feeling that the other species were missing something important, something they would not understand until it was too late. Sithran was not done with his story. The big Vextai seemed to enjoy having an audience, and his voice grew even louder as more beings in the cantina turned to listen. He gestured wildly with his clawed hands, acting out parts of his tail. The human ship was called the Scientific Dawn, he said, making the name sound like a joke. A research vessel, they claimed, looking for new forms of plant life on the rim worlds, as if the galaxy needs more weak mammals poking around where they don't belong. Several aliens laughed at this. A group of methane breathers at a corner table made sounds that might have been amusement, though it was hard to tell through their breathing apparatus. Kale took another sip of his synthetic whiskey and tried to focus on his food. But Sithran's voice kept pulling his attention back to the story. Something about it felt familiar, though he could not place why. We found them in orbit around Kepler 442, Sithran continued, a useless rock of a planet with nothing but plants and bacteria. The humans had been there for weeks, collecting samples like children gathering flowers. They didn't even have proper weapons on their ship. One of the other Vextai spoke up. Tell them about the surrender signal. Ah, yes. Sithran's eyes glowed brighter with amusement. As soon as we appeared on their sensors, they began broadcasting surrender signals. Not even a token resistance. They just gave up immediately. Please don't fire, their captain said over the comm. We're just scientists. The laughter in the cantina grew louder. Even species that were normally neutral toward humans seemed to find the story amusing. Kale recognized the attitudes. In a galaxy where most species had evolved as predators or had to fight to survive, the idea of giving up without a fight was seen as the ultimate weakness. But something nagged at Kale's mind. Kepler 442 was in the news a few months ago. He tried to remember what he had heard about it. The best part was their leader, Sithran said. his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that somehow carried across the room. A female named... He paused as if trying to remember. Vasquez, one of his companions, supplied. Dr. Elena Vasquez. The name hit Cale like a physical blow. Now he remembered the news reports. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been leading a xenobiology expedition to study plant adaptation on rim worlds. Her team had been reported missing 3 months ago. The Galactic Council had launched an investigation, but no trace of the ship or crew had ever been found. Yes, Vasquez. Cithron smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. She was the funniest of all. When we boarded their ship, she actually tried to negotiate with us. Offered to pay ransom for her crew, as if we were merchants instead of warriors. Kyle's hand was gripping his glass so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. The synthetic whiskey suddenly tasted like poison in his mouth. But when she realized we were going to take them all as slaves, Cithron continued, she broke down completely, started crying and begging. Please, she said, take me, but let the others go. Some of them are just graduate students. They're barely adults. The cantina erupted in fresh laughter. Several beings at nearby tables raised their drinks in salute to Cithron's story. The Vextai leader basked in the attention, clearly enjoying himself. So naturally, we took them all, he said with a shrug. The crying female, the young ones, all of them. Good prices in the slave markets of the Outer Rim. Humans are popular now that they're the new species. Exotic but not dangerous. Kyle felt something cold settle in his stomach. Dr. Vasquez and her team were not just missing. They had been captured by pirates and sold into slavery. And this monster was bragging about it to a room full of beings who thought it was hilarious. But worse was coming. Cithron reached into his armor and pulled out a small device. It projected a holographic display into the air above the table, visible to everyone in the cantina. I even recorded some of it, he said proudly. For training purposes, you understand. To show other warriors how pathetic the humans really are. The hologram flickered to life, showing the interior of a human spaceship. Cale could see the clean, functional design that marked all human vessels. But the image was shaky, recorded from a handheld device as someone moved through the ship. Voices could be heard in the background. Human voices speaking in panicked tones. Then the image centered on a woman with dark hair and wearing a blue scientific uniform. She was kneeling on the floor, her hands clasped in front of her in a pleading gesture. Dr. Elena Vasquez. Cale recognized her from the news reports. She had been a respected xenobiologist, winner of several awards for her work on cross-species plant adaptation. In the hologram, she looked terrified and desperate. Please. Her voice came through the device's speakers. We're just researchers. We're not military. We don't have anything valuable except our data. Cithron's voice could be heard laughing in the recording. Your data is worthless to me, soft mammal. But you and your crew will bring good prices. The image showed Dr. Vasquez turning to look behind her. There, partially visible in the hologram, was a young man who couldn't have been more than 20 years old. He was wearing the same blue uniform and his face was pale with terror. Not him, Dr. Vasquez pleaded in the recording. He's just a graduate student. This is his first assignment, please. All of you come with us, Cithron's recorded voice replied. The young ones are worth more anyway. The hologram showed Dr. Vasquez reaching out toward the young man, trying to shield him with her body. But then armored hands grabbed her and pulled her away. Her voice could be heard calling out, David, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The recording ended and the hologram faded away. The cantina was silent for a moment, then erupted in the loudest laughter yet. Beings from across the galaxy found the display of human weakness to be the funniest thing they had seen in months. But Kyle was not laughing. He was not even breathing properly. Something had changed inside him. Something fundamental and dangerous. The cold feeling in his stomach was spreading through his entire body. He looked around the cantina at all the beings who were laughing and joking about the torture and enslavement of innocent people, at the Vextai who were congratulating themselves on their victory over unarmed scientists, at the other species who thought human suffering was entertainment. Cithron noticed Cale's reaction and smiled. The big reptilian had spotted the only human in the cantina and decided to have some more fun. What's wrong, soft mammal? He called out across the room. Did our story upset you? Are you going to cry like your fellow humans? The laughter in the cantina focused on Cale now. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward him, waiting to see what the human would do. Would he break down and weep like the humans in the story? Would he run away in fear? Or would he try to fight and prove just how weak his species really was? Kale slowly pushed his chair back and stood up. The cantina grew quieter as beings realized something was happening. The atmosphere in the room began to change, though most of the aliens did not understand what they were feeling. He walked toward Cithron's table with steady, measured steps. His face was calm, but something in his eyes made several of the more perceptive species shift uncomfortably in their seats. A few empathic beings suddenly looked worried, though they could not explain why. Kyle stopped in front of the Vextai table and looked directly at Cithron. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried clearly across the silent cantina. "Dr. Elena Vasquez," he said. She was 43 years old. She had 2 children back on Earth and a husband who taught at the university. She spent her life trying to find new ways to grow food on hostile worlds so that her species and others could expand safely into the galaxy. Cithron laughed, but it sounded forced now. So what does that matter? She was weak. They all were. Kale's expression did not change. David Chen was 21. He was working on his doctoral thesis about plant adaptation to high radiation environments. His parents immigrated to Earth from Old Terra Colony, and he was the first person in his family to attend university. The cantina was completely silent now. Even the background noise of the station seemed muted. They were scientists, Kale continued in that same quiet voice. They were trying to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. And you murdered them. Cithron stood up, towering over the human. His clawed hands rested on the weapons at his belt. I sold them, not murdered them. And what are you going to do about it, soft mammal? Cry? Beg like they did? Kale looked up at the 7-foot-tall reptilian warrior and smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. No, he said quietly. I'm going to show you what happens when you mistake kindness for weakness. What happened next was not what anyone in the cantina expected. Cithron reached for his weapon, a curved blade that could cut through most materials in the galaxy. He was fast, faster than most beings could follow. The Vextai were known for their quick reflexes and deadly combat skills. In the time it took most creatures to blink, he could draw his blade and strike a killing blow. But Kale was already moving. The human stepped forward and to the side in one smooth motion. His right hand came up and caught Cithron's wrist just as the Vextai's fingers touched his weapon. At the same time, Kale's left hand struck the reptilian's elbow with surgical precision. The sound of breaking bone echoed through the silent cantina. Cithron screamed, a harsh hissing sound that hurt the ears of every being in the room. His arm hung at an impossible angle, the joint shattered. The weapon fell from his nerveless fingers and clattered on the floor. But Kale was not done. Before Cithron could recover from the shock, the human's knee drove upward into the Vextai's midsection. The impact lifted the 7-foot-tall reptilian off his feet and sent him crashing backward into his table. The other Vextai at the table reacted instantly. These were warriors, pirates who had fought across the galaxy. They moved with trained precision, drawing their weapons and attacking from multiple angles. They might as well have been moving through thick liquid. Kale flowed between them like water, never where they expected him to be. A Vextai blade swept through the air where his head had been a split second before. The warrior overextended, thrown off balance by the missed strike. Kale's elbow found the gap in the alien's armor right below the ribcage. The warrior doubled over, gasping. Another Vextai tried to grab Kale from behind, wrapping his arms around the human's chest. It should have worked. The reptilian was larger and stronger than any human, but Kale dropped his weight, slipped out of the grip and spun around. His fist struck the Vextai's throat with enough force to crush the cartilage. The warrior collapsed, clutching his neck and making choking sounds. The cantina erupted into chaos as beings scrambled to get away from the fight. Tables overturned, drinks spilled, and chairs crashed to the floor. But even in the confusion, every eye was on the impossible scene playing out in the center of the room. The human was winning. More than that, he was dominating. Every move he made was perfect, efficient, and devastating. He did not waste motion or energy. Each strike found its target with mechanical precision. He fought like a machine built for killing. A Klaxon trader who had been laughing at human weakness just minutes before watched in horror as Kyle caught a Vextai blade with his bare hands. The metal should have sliced through human flesh like paper. Instead, Kale twisted his wrists and the blade snapped. He drove the broken end into the warrior's shoulder, pinning him to a wooden support beam. Impossible, the Klaxon whispered in his own language. Humans are weak. They're soft mammals, but what he was seeing said otherwise. The human moved like a predator, like something born to hunt and kill. His eyes were focused and calm, showing no emotion except cold calculation. He was not angry or enraged. He was working, solving the problem of armed opponents with the same efficiency a mechanic might show when fixing a broken engine. A Zephyrite merchant, whose crystalline body resonated with vibrations, felt the shock waves from each of Kale's strikes. The precision was perfect. Every blow landed exactly where it would cause maximum damage with minimum effort. The human understood anatomy, leverage, and force in ways that should have taken decades to learn. 2 more Vexthai had joined the fight, rushing in from other tables. They attacked with energy weapons, thinking ranged combat would give them an advantage. The first blast missed Kale by inches, scorching the wall behind him. The second never fired. Kyle had closed the distance before the warrior could aim properly. His hand clamped down on the alien's weapon arm, fingers finding nerve clusters that the Vexthai did not even know existed. The energy weapon fell from paralyzed fingers. The human's other hand struck upward, palm flat, driving the Vexthai's nasal ridge back into his brain. The warrior dropped instantly, dead before he hit the floor. The last armed Vexthai tried to back away, his energy weapon shaking in his hands. "Stay back, mammal. I'll kill you." Kale looked at him with those calm, calculating eyes. Then he picked up a metal chair with one hand and threw it. The chair spun through the air like a discus, its edge catching the Vexthai in the head. The warrior went down hard, his weapon skittering across the floor. In less than 2 minutes, 6 Vexthai warriors lay broken and bleeding around the cantina. Some were unconscious, others were crying out in pain, and one was dead. The beings who had been laughing at human weakness just minutes before now stared in absolute terror. But Kale was not done. He walked back to where Cithran was trying to crawl away, dragging his broken arm behind him. The big reptilian's yellow eyes were wide with fear and pain. "Please," Cithran gasped. "I yield. I surrender." Kale grabbed him by the neck and lifted him off the floor. The Vexthai was nearly twice his weight, but the human held him like he weighed nothing at all. "You remember Dr. Vasquez begging you to spare her students?" Kale's voice was still quiet, still calm. "You remember how funny you thought it was?" Cithran's eyes bulged as Kyle's grip tightened. I was just following orders." "It was business, nothing personal." "It became personal when you decided to brag about it," Kale replied. He carried the struggling Vexthai over to the wall and slammed him against it. The impact cracked the metal plating. "Where are they?" Kyle asked. "Where did you sell them?" I don't know," Cithran wheezed. "The slave markets change constantly. They could be anywhere by now." Kale's free hand moved to Cithran's good arm. His fingers found the elbow joint and applied pressure. The Vexthai screamed as his second arm broke. "Wrong answer," Kale said. "Try again. The hegemony keeps records." Cithran gasped. "All slave transactions are logged, but I don't have access to them." Kale studied the reptilian's face for a moment, reading the truth in his expression. Then he threw Cithran across the room like a piece of garbage. The Vexthai hit a table and collapsed, whimpering. The cantina was silent except for the groans of the wounded. Every being in the room stared at the human who stood in the center of the destruction. His clothes were barely wrinkled. His breathing was normal. There was no sign that he had just single-handedly defeated 6 trained warriors. A server droid rolled up to him, its optical sensors flickering uncertainly. "Sir, shall I call station security?" Kale looked around the room at all the beings who had been laughing at human suffering. They cringed away from his gaze, no longer seeing a weak mammal but something far more dangerous. "Yes," he said quietly. "Call them. I'll be filing assault charges against these warriors for their documented attack on the research vessel Scientific Dawn. The evidence is right there," he pointed to the holographic recorder that Cithran had dropped. It was still functional, containing the proof of the Vexthai's crimes. An Altarian trader at a corner table found his voice. You're just a cargo hauler. How did you—" Kyle turned to look at him and the Altarian's words died in his throat. Those human eyes held depths that the alien had not suspected. They were the eyes of something that had evolved to hunt, to track, to kill when necessary. "I'm a human," Kyle said simply. "We're not as weak as you think." He walked back to his own table, which had somehow remained upright during the fight. His meal was cold now, but he sat down and continued eating as if nothing had happened. The whiskey still tasted synthetic, but it seemed more tolerable now. Station security would arrive soon. There would be questions, reports, and investigations. The Galactic Council would want to know how a single human had defeated multiple Vextai warriors with his bare hands. Other species would demand explanations. But for now, Cal just wanted to finish his dinner in peace. He had a cargo to unload tomorrow and another job to pick up. Life would go on. Around him, the cantina remained silent except for the quiet whimpering of the defeated Vextai. The beings who had mocked human weakness just an hour before now watched the calm human with a mixture of fear and newfound respect. Something fundamental had changed in their understanding of humanity. The soft mammals who cried when hurt had just demonstrated that they were capable of violence that terrified species who prided themselves on being warriors. And Cale Morrison, cargo hauler, had done it all without breaking a sweat. Station security arrived 12 minutes later, which was fast by Nexus station standards. They came in force. 6 armed guards led by Chief Brundar, a massive ursoid who looked like a cross between a bear and a gorilla. His species was known for their strength and their no-nonsense approach to law enforcement. Brundar stopped in the doorway of the cantina and stared at the scene. 6 Vextai warriors were scattered around the room in various states of injury. One was clearly dead, his nasal ridge driven back into his brain. The others were either unconscious or groaning in pain. In the center of it all sat a human, calmly eating his dinner. What happened here? Brundar's voice was a low growl that made the damaged furniture vibrate. Cale looked up from his meal. These Vextai assaulted me with deadly weapons after I confronted them about their recorded confession to piracy and slavery. I defended myself. Cithran, still conscious despite his broken arms, tried to speak.
He attacked us.
The human is lying. Brundar looked from the injured Vextai to the unharmed human and back again. His small black eyes were intelligent despite his brutish appearance. He had been a security chief for 15 years and had seen every kind of bar fight imaginable. But this was something new. You're telling me, he said slowly, that one human did this to 6 Vextai warriors? I'm telling you that 6 Vextai warriors attacked one human, Cale replied. The results speak for themselves. A server droid rolled forward, its optical sensors focused on the security chief. Chief Brundar, all events were recorded by our security system. Additionally, evidence of the Vextai's criminal activities is available on this device. The droid extended a mechanical arm towards Cithran's holographic recorder. Brundar picked up the device and activated it. The hologram of Dr. Vasquez appeared again, kneeling and begging for the lives of her students. The security chief's expression grew darker as he watched the recording. When it ended, he looked at Cithran with disgust. Slave trading, he rumbled. In my jurisdiction. You recorded your own crimes and then bragged about them in public. It was legal salvage, Cithran protested. The humans surrendered their ship. Surrender doesn't make slavery legal, Brundar replied. He gestured to his officers. Arrest all the Vextai. Charges of piracy, slavery, and assault. As the security guards moved to secure the prisoners, Brundar approached Cale's table. The human continued eating, seemingly unconcerned by the chaos around him. I need to see the security footage, Brundar said. All of it. The cantina's owner, a nervous Centaurian, activated the main display screen. The footage began with Cithran telling his story and progressed through the confrontation. Every being in the cantina watched in silence as the events played out again. The fight looked even more impossible on screen. The footage clearly showed 6 armed warriors attacking one unarmed human. It also clearly showed the human systematically dismantling his attackers with surgical precision. Brundar paused the recording at several points, studying individual moves. His security training allowed him to analyze combat techniques, and what he saw disturbed him. The human fought with a level of skill that should have required decades of training. More than that, he seemed to have an instinctive understanding of Vextai anatomy and weaknesses. Where did you learn to fight like that? Brundar asked. Cale shrugged. Basic self-defense training. Most humans learn it growing up. The security chief's expression was skeptical. That wasn't basic anything. That was advanced combat technique. Maybe your definition of advanced is different from ours, Cale replied. Before Brundar could pursue the topic further, his communication device chimed. He listened to the incoming message and his expression grew troubled. We have a problem, he said. Word of what happened here is already spreading through the station's communication network. And beyond, he was right. Within minutes of the fight ending, beings throughout the cantina had begun sending messages to friends, family, and business associates. The story of a human defeating 6 HFY warriors spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. By the time the prisoners were loaded into security transports, the story had reached the station's main communication hub. From there, it propagated across the galactic communication network at faster-than-light speeds. On a Klaxon trade ship 3 star systems away, Captain Zixtal received a message from his cousin on Nexus Station. The message included footage from the cantina fight. Zixtal watched it 3 times before forwarding it to other Klaxon traders with a note: "Be careful around humans. They're not what they seem." In the crystal gardens of the Zephyrite homeworld, Harmonic Overseer Quilmar received a resonance transmission containing the same footage. The musical tones that conveyed Zephyrite emotion were discordant with shock and confusion. Within hours, every Zephyrite in the galaxy had heard the story. On the Vexthai homeworld of Serac Prime, military commanders gathered in an emergency session to view the footage. High Commander Vexmoth, supreme leader of the Vexthai hegemony, watched the recording in stunned silence. "How is this possible?" asked one of his subordinates. "Our intelligence reports say humans are physically weak. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no enhanced reflexes." Vexmoth replayed the section where Kyle caught a Vexthai blade with his bare hands. "Our intelligence reports were wrong," he said quietly. "Send a message to all hegemony forces. Humans are to be treated as a potential threat until further notice." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On a dozen worlds, military leaders and government officials watched the footage and asked the same questions. How had a single human defeated multiple Vexthai warriors? What did this mean for their understanding of human capabilities? But the most significant reaction came from an unexpected source: other humans. On Earth, the recording reached the Global Defense Council within hours. General Patricia Morrison, no relation to Kale, studied the footage with a team of analysts. What they saw confirmed their worst fears about humanity's integration into galactic society. He held back. General Morrison said quietly, "Look at the precision of his strikes. Look at his movement patterns. That's not civilian self-defense training." Colonel James Wu, the Council's chief intelligence officer, nodded grimly. "Enhanced reflexes, perfect anatomical knowledge, combat efficiency that exceeds our special forces standards. Either Cale Morrison is lying about his background or civilian humans are more dangerous than we thought," General Morrison finished. "How many of our people out there have the same capabilities and don't even know it?" The question was more disturbing than anyone wanted to admit. Humanity's integration into the galactic community had been based on the assumption that they were a peaceful, relatively weak species. If that assumption was wrong, it would change everything. On colony worlds throughout human space, similar discussions were taking place. Dr. Sarah Chen, head of xenobiology at New Terra Colony, watched the recording with growing unease. "This changes our entire approach to first contact protocols," she told her team. "We've been presenting ourselves as harmless because we thought we were harmless. But if Cale Morrison is representative of average human capabilities," she didn't finish the sentence. The implications were too large to process immediately. Meanwhile, on Nexus Station, Cale Morrison finished his meal and paid his bill. He left a generous tip for the server droid, despite the disruption to his evening. As he walked back toward the docking bays, he passed other humans in the corridor. Traders, tourists, and travelers who had been on the station during the incident. They looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Kyle?" A woman approached him. She was Captain Lisa Park, commanding officer of a human passenger liner. "Is it true what they're saying?" "Did you really—" "I defended myself," Kale said simply. "Nothing more." But Captain Park's expression was troubled. "The whole galaxy is talking about it. They're saying humans aren't what they claim to be." Kyle paused at the entrance to Docking Bay 17. "Maybe the problem is that we never claimed to be anything. We just let them make their own assumptions." He entered his ship and sealed the airlock behind him. Tomorrow he would unload his cargo and pick up another job. But he suspected that things would never be quite the same. Across the galaxy, the story continued to spread. In government offices, military headquarters, and trading posts, beings who had dismissed humans as weak mammals were reassessing their assumptions. The age of galactic innocence for humanity was over. The question now was what would replace it. 3 weeks after the incident at Nexus Station, the Galactic Council's Institute of Xenobiology was in chaos. Scientists from across the galaxy had gathered on the neutral moon of Harmony to address what they were calling the human question. Dr. Thelnara, a respected Altarian xenobiologist, stood before a packed auditorium. Her normally graceful movements were agitated as she manipulated the holographic display floating above the podium. "The evidence is undeniable," she said, her melodic voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "We have fundamentally misunderstood the nature of human physiology and psychology." The display showed anatomical diagrams of various galactic species, with humans highlighted for comparison. Red markers indicated areas where initial assessments had been incorrect. "Our first mistake was assuming that soft meant weak," Dr. Thelnara continued. "Human muscle density is actually higher than most mammalian species. Their bones, while appearing fragile, have a tensile strength comparable to our manufactured composites." A Klaxon researcher in the front row clicked his mandibles nervously, but the medical scans during first contact showed normal mammalian parameters. "Nothing exceptional, because humans were relaxed," Dr. Thelnara replied. "We now know that human physiology includes what they call an adrenal response system. Under stress, their bodies undergo dramatic biochemical changes that enhance strength, speed, and pain tolerance." She activated a new section of the display showing comparative footage. On one side was a human undergoing routine medical testing during first contact. On the other side was enhanced footage from the Nexus Station incident. The difference was startling. The human in the medical footage appeared exactly as the aliens had always seen them: soft, slow, and unremarkable. But the enhanced footage from the fight showed something else entirely. Frame-by-frame analysis revealed impossible speed and precision. "Their reaction times during combat scenarios are 3 times faster than our baseline measurements," Dr. Thelnara explained. "Their strength output increases by an average of 40%. Most remarkably, they seem to enter a state of heightened tactical awareness." A methane breather's artificial voice synthesizer crackled to life. "Are you suggesting that humans have been deliberately hiding their capabilities?" "Not deliberately," said Dr. Kelleth, a crystalline zephyrate whose harmonics indicated deep concern. "We believe this is an unconscious adaptation. Humans instinctively downplay their abilities to appear less threatening." Dr. Thelnara nodded. "This behavior pattern is consistent with what we're now identifying as persistence predator psychology. Humans evolved as pack hunters on a high-gravity death world. They learned to be patient, to wait for the right moment, and to strike with overwhelming efficiency. The implications were staggering. Every species in the galaxy had welcomed humanity, based on the assumption that they were harmless newcomers who needed protection and guidance. Instead, they had invited apex predators into their civilization. But the revelations were just beginning. On Earth, the Global Defense Council had been conducting their own investigation. General Morrison stood before a screen, displaying a world map covered in red dots. Every red dot represents a human who has had an unusual encounter with alien species in the past 5 years, she explained to her staff. Encounters where humans displayed capabilities that shouldn't exist according to our official assessments. Colonel Wu manipulated the display, zooming in on various regions. "We've identified over 3,000 incidents. Traders who negotiated better deals after being threatened, colonists who survived in environments that should have killed them, passengers who fought off pirate attacks with improvised weapons. And we dismissed all of them as exaggerations or lucky coincidences," General Morrison said grimly. "We've been so focused on integration that we ignored the evidence of our own nature." Dr. Amanda Foster, the Council's chief psychologist, raised her hand. "There's another factor we haven't considered: the psychological impact of being constantly underestimated." She activated a different display showing survey data from human populations throughout the galaxy. "We've been asking the wrong questions," Dr. Foster continued. "Instead of why are humans violent, we should have been asking, why are humans so restrained? The answer is that they've been trying to fit in," the data was revealing. Psychological profiles showed that humans consistently suppressed their natural competitive instincts, their territorial behaviors, and their predatory responses. They had been molding themselves into what they thought the galaxy wanted them to be. "But suppression isn't elimination," Dr. Foster warned. As we've seen at Nexus Station, when the artificial constraints are removed, humans revert to their natural behavior patterns. Colonel Wu brought up the enhanced footage of Cale Morrison again. Look at his face during the fight. He's not angry. He's not in a berserker rage. He's calm, focused, and methodical. This isn't aberrant behavior for a human. This is what they're actually like when they stop pretending to be harmless. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not lied about their nature because they had not understood it themselves. They had adapted so completely to their assumed role as the galaxy's weakest species that they had forgotten what they really were. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, other species were coming to their own conclusions. High Commander Vexmoth of the Vextai hegemony studied intelligence reports with growing alarm. Since the Nexus Station incident, there had been dozens of confrontations between Vextai forces and humans. The results were consistently disturbing. Human trading vessels are fighting back, reported his intelligence chief. They're using tactics we've never seen before. Coordinated pack behaviors, psychological warfare, targeting of our command structures. Vexmoth reviewed the combat footage. What he saw challenged everything his species believed about warfare. Humans fought with a patience and cunning that the aggressive Vextai could not match. They would absorb initial attacks, analyze their opponents, and then respond with devastating precision. They're not just fighting, he realized. They're learning. Every encounter makes them more dangerous. The Klaxon Confederacy was reaching similar conclusions. Their traders reported that human merchants had become impossible to cheat or intimidate. What had once been easy marks were now sharp negotiators who seemed to read Klaxon intentions perfectly. Even the peaceful Altarians were concerned. Their diplomatic corps reported that human ambassadors had become more assertive, more demanding. They no longer accepted unfavorable treaties or trade agreements with graceful acquiescence. But perhaps the most disturbing reports came from the galactic frontier. On the rim worlds, human colonies that should have failed were not just surviving, but thriving. Worlds with hostile environments, dangerous predators, and impossible atmospheric conditions were being terraformed by human settlers with remarkable efficiency. They're not terraforming, reported a Centaurian survey team. They're adapting, making the hostile environments work for them instead of against them. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans were not the weak, harmless species the galaxy had believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had evolved to survive anything the universe could throw at them. Dr. Thelnura concluded her presentation to the stunned Xenobiology Conference. With a sobering assessment, we must reconsider our entire approach to human integration, she said. The species we thought we were helping has been helping us. The beings we thought needed our protection have been protecting us from themselves. She paused, letting the implications sink in. The question now is not whether humans are dangerous. The question is what they intend to do with capabilities they're only just beginning to understand. Back on his cargo ship, Cale Morrison was unaware of the galaxy-wide reassessment his actions had triggered. He was focused on his navigation charts, planning his next delivery route. The cargo hold was full of rare minerals bound for the Tauseti system, and he wanted to make good time. His communication system chimed with an incoming message. It was from Captain Park, the human passenger liner commander he had met on Nexus Station. Cale, I hope you're watching the news feeds. Things are changing out here. Other species are treating humans differently now. Some are more respectful, but others seem scared. I thought you should know. Cal saved the message and returned to his charts. He hummed an old Earth song under his breath. Something about sleeping giants and the wisdom of not poking sleeping bears. Outside his viewports, the stars streamed past in brilliant lines of light. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was reassessing everything it thought it knew about humanity. The age of human innocence was over. The question now was what would replace it. As his ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying him toward his next destination, Cale Morrison continued humming. The melody was ancient, dating back to Earth's early space age. It was called Born Free, and it seemed oddly appropriate. After all, humanity was finally free to be itself. The galaxy was about to learn what that really meant.